If you love The Simpsons, boy do I got a video for you. After utterly wasting this whole week binge-watching pretty much all 36 seasons of the show, I can personally tell you, Montgomery Burns is not only the final boss of capitalism, he's the final boss of felons. I have documented an insane amount of abominable crimes Mr. Burns is guilty of and will be ranking them by sentence length. Please don't let the hounds be released on me.
Release the hounds.
Being the safety inspector of Springfield's nuclear power plant is a pretty important job, surely requiring lots of intelligence and competence. So why the hell did Mr. Burns employ the dumbest guy in the world to do it? Well, I hate to be a Homer hater, guys. He sucks at his job. Like Frank Grimes was onto something. Dude, he sucks so much that he once managed to cause a nuclear meltdown in a van that had no nuclear material in it.
No, this can't be happening!
After that calamity, inspectors from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission made Mr. Burns send Homer to college so he could get nuclear physics training. Why not just fire him and Anyways, in real life, this old man would be getting charged with negligence for employing a dumb oaf like Homer who endangers employees and public health by his mere presence in the plant. Miraculously, nobody has died from Homer's incompetence yet. However, Mr. Burns could still be charged with negligence here. He just received the lowest penalty of 60 days in jail. But I'm gonna have to double that as Mr. Burns employs yet another worker who could put everyone's lives in danger.
Get back to work, Stuart.
Mr. Burns' office is huge and eerie looking, especially with that taxidermy polar bear, so it wouldn't surprise me if a dead body has been in there at one point or another. Homer takes his family out for dinner at a fancy restaurant where a famous hypnotist is performing. The hypnotist works his mind magic on Homer by making him believe he's 12 years old again, so there really shouldn't be much change.
Do something, Mesmerino.
Yes.
Oh, that's better.
And people complain about babies screaming in restaurants. The hypnotist runs away without helping Homer, and Marge and the kids take him home screaming. He continues his awful ruckus right up until bedtime, but maybe a good night's rest will snap him out of whatever disturbed mental state he's trapped in. Bro, they're gonna need every cough drop in Springfield if he doesn't stop this. Like, that cannot be healthy. Carl thinks Homer is dealing with some kind of repressed memory, and Lisa suggests using special Indian tea to unlock these memories. He drinks the tea and revisits a memory from his teens.
Not so fast.
Uh-oh, he's got a daisy. We better scram. 18 more pumps. That could break the skin.
Hey, thanks, Moo.
And that's how a troubled young Mo saved the day.
Mo, what are you doing here?
Hey, did you see that acne on Mo's face disappear when he got off the rock? I wonder if anyone got fired for that blunder. After arriving at the Simpsons' house wondering why his usual drunks aren't at the tavern, Mo drinks some of the tea and continues the memory himself. The boys are camping out onto the stairs after scaring off Fat Tony and his sidekicks, but their peaceful marshmallow roasting gets interrupted by the nuclear power plant going up in flames. The boys ignore this fire, and the next morning they debate about whether or not they should dive off a cliff into mud.
Only a moron would jump into that.
Homer says falling into mud wasn't why he's been screaming and starts to recall something else that happened in the quarry all those years ago. And that's why you can't beat camping in your own backyard, folks. Since Homer never told anyone about the body, Lisa thinks the corpse must still be there. So the Simpsons hop in their car to go and locate said corpse. Quality family bonding, might I add. And when they arrive at the cliff from Homer's memory, something rustles in the bushes. But alas, it's not a ghost. It's just Chief Wiggum. Certified Chief Wiggum moment. Lisa tells him that they're investigating a possible murder, and Wiggum, forgetting he's a literal cop, asks for permission to tag along, and they find a skeleton. They venture down the pipe and reach a dead end with a hatch above it. Chief Wiggum then opens the hatch, and the killer is exposed.
Yeah! What are you doing in my corpse hatch?
Montgomery Burns, you're under arrest for murder.
Did I say corpse hatch? I meant innocence tube.
Bart shows Burns the skull. Yeah, I don't think you were supposed to touch that, buddy. And the old man comes clean. He explains the skull belongs to Waylon Smithers Sr. and gets out an old tape recording to prove that he didn't kill him.
So, you're a baby, huh? How's that working out for you? He did it! Look at your heroic daddy in there, making funny faces, falling to the floor, shedding his hair, lying perfectly still. Oh, dear.
This film should be played to anyone considering working for Mr. Burns. Also, why did Smithers need glasses when he was like a few months old? Mr. Burns says he shoved Waylon's body down the sewage pipe because cover-ups were apparently all the rage back then. It's all the rage now, too, by the way. And while Waylon Sr.'s death was a freak accident, Mr. Burns would definitely be charged with concealing his body, and the crime would land him in the slammer for 4 years. But don't let Mr. Burns' very disrespectful treatment of Waylon Sr.'s remains distract you from the fact that Homer kept this very sick souvenir from that night.
Homer, shouldn't we give that skull to Mr. Smithers?
Why, you just bury it.
Hey, I found a clue that's gonna bust your mystery wide open.
Snooping on others is wrong, but The Simpsons proved that some good can come from it, kind of. Homer buys a computer and launches his own website after realizing the device can't kill Flanders for him. While it is just a bunch of random clip art at first, it soon turns into a juicy gossip site where Mr. X, aka Homer, exposes shocking secrets about the people of Springfield, like how Mayor Quimby spent the street repair fund on a swimming pool for himself.
Good Lord, we've discovered the ruins of an ancient city. Okay, you do better.
And how Apu sells some very special bagels.
My bagels are nothing but we call donuts.
Who am I to point the finger?
One day at work, Homer's in the restroom and overhears Burns talking to Smithers about attending a top-secret meeting which he calls pure journalistic dynamite. This is a golden opportunity Homer can't afford to miss, so he hides in the air vent of Burns' office and gets ready to hear the secret, which is probably going to interest the US government a lot more than Mr. X's regular readers.
It's agreed. I'll supply you terrorists with deadly uranium.
You are a credit to the great Satan.
Oh, sure.
Homer goes home and blogs about the terrorist attack, resulting in Burns getting arrested and possibly hundreds of lives being saved. The town hosts an award ceremony to honor Mr. X for foiling the terrorist attack, and just when you thought Homer had become Springfield's #1 Good Samaritan, this happens.
Unfortunately, we don't know who he is, so his cash award will be used to feed starving children.
No! I'm Mr. X! Gimme!
Supplying deadly weapons to terrorists will definitely get Burns charged with terrorism, and if convicted, he'd probably be jailed for life. So that's 25 years if he's punished by the laws of Oregon, the state The Simpsons is roughly based upon. Theft being one of Mr. Burns' crimes just pisses me off so much. Like, he can afford to buy basically anything on this planet. Why is he stealing? After mocking all the fools rushing to file their taxes before the deadline, Homer realizes he forgot to do his return. He fills out a huge amount of fraudulent information and races to hand in the document. This obviously leads to the government arresting him for fraud. An FBI agent decides to use him to gather inside information for a very important case the government's been trying to crack for decades. Homer is then taken inside a photo booth and this secret video is played to him. Mr. Burns must have had an amazing PR team back in the day. How else could he have been deemed trustworthy enough to carry out such an important job? The FBI suspects Burns still has the $1 trillion bill hidden in his house, and they want Homer to help them find it. That night, with an obvious microphone under his shirt, he rings Burns' doorbell and gets invited in after the Release the Hounds button fails. But Monty isn't being friendly or anything, he's only letting Homer inside so he can scald them with hot water. Luckily, the water wasn't boiled long enough, and while his boss goes to fetch him a towel, Homer gets a chance to search for the $1 trillion bill.
What is this? What are you doing?
Maybe I should give Bran another shot. Nah. Monty walks in and catches Homer red-handed. Thinking the gig is up, he goes to pop a suicide pill he brought with him, but fortunately, Mr. Burns just thinks he's a journalist who wants to put him in Star Snoop. He gives Homer a tour of the house, including his Hall of Patriots, a large room commemorating all the greatest achievements of the Burns family. And one of the displays is Mr. Burns himself holding the $1 trillion bill in all its glory.
standing up against America's reckless spendthrift politicians. It commemorates my liberation of $1 trillion that would have been foolishly squandered. Let's move.
He really does make Ebenezer Scrooge seem like a fantastic guy. Burns reveals that this wasn't the $1 trillion bill. He actually keeps the real one safely tucked away somewhere absolutely no one could ever get it.
Right here.
Wow, that must be worth a fortune.
Wow. Imagine if he just lost his wallet. It'd be like winning the lottery 10 times over for whoever found it. At this point, the FBI busts in and arrests Mr. Burns for grand larceny. The geezer is led away, accusing the government of being the real thieves for making people pay income tax. I can't disagree. Mr. Burns will be doomed to spend the next 30 years in jail for grand theft, plus another year for evading arrest. Yeah, he didn't come quietly. But what the jerk really deserves is a $1 trillion fine. Too bad they don't hand those down, though. Every guy has a type. Some prefer blondes, brunettes, redheads, rainbow. But Mr. Burns, he ain't your typical ordinary guy. Nah, this dude's got a thing for blue hair. Very tall blue hair. The Simpson house is sinking and they'll need $8,500 to save their home. Marge decides to get a job to pay for the repairs, and lo and behold, she nabs a position at the Springfield power plant. But knowing how much Mr. Burns despises his workers, poor Marge must be in for a world of trouble, right?
Lollygaggers, noodleheads, enchantress. That woman, she's so captivating. Smithers, my heart's pounding like a jackhammer. I must have her.
Mr. Burns is so head over heels in love with Marge that he's willing to be nice to the other employees just to please her. He takes her advice on ways to boost morale in the plant, and pretty soon, there's music playing everywhere and workers are turning up in funny hats. And if you thought Mr. Burns has already lost it at this point, just look at what he does after finding out that Tom Jones is Marge's favorite singer.
That's it. Big smile. Everybody's happy.
Oh my goodness!
That's right, he actually kidnapped the singer to try and seduce Marge. If this isn't coming on too strongly, I don't know what is. After finding out Marge is married, Burns angrily fires her, but Marge is a smart lady who knows her rights. She threatens to sue the pants off Mr. Burns, and he replies with this very creepy comment.
You don't have to sue me to get my pants off.
Mrs. Simpson teams up with Lionel Hutz to file the lawsuit. However, he is no match for Mr. Burns' army of attorneys. I love how they were all behind the wall just waiting to be needed. Me for real. Accepting defeat, Marge says they should go before Homer gets fired too, but he loves his wife enough to finally stand up to his mean old boss.
Mr. Burns, I'm not leaving until you say you're sorry for what you did to my wife.
Seeing how much Homer loves Marge moves Mr. Burns' tiny shriveled heart for the second time in this episode, and also his life, and he sends the couple on a romantic date, which he has personally arranged the entertainment for.
It's not unusual to have fun with anyone.
Get help, love. Call Interpol. Get me a hacksaw. Anything.
It's not unusual.
I wonder what became of Tom Jones after that. Were the hounds released on him? Maybe he was stored away in Burns' office forever. Anyway, sending Homer and Marge on a romantic date was almost a sweet gesture if you ignored the terrified singer. For kidnapping Tom Jones, Monty would be jailed for 25 years. He'd also get an additional 20 years for forced labor, since there's no way he paid his hostage for that performance. Mr. Burns also committed harassment in that episode. While he never touched Marge inappropriately, making that suggestive comment and then purring like a cat. I mean, come on, dude. You're basically asking to be imprisoned for 6 months in jail. Putting up with horrible bosses is just one of the many aspects of adult life. I thought the Springfield nuclear power plant workers had it bad until I found out that Mr. Burns literally tried to bury an employee alive. It's Valentine's Day, and Homer is taking a depressed walk alone after Marge was too tired to make love. He comes across a billboard for the Springfield Extension School, and he decides to spice up his marriage by taking a stripping course. However, he's a little too eager and ends up getting kicked out just a few minutes into the class.
What the hell are you doing? Homer, are you already oiled?
3 coats.
That oil was for the entire class. Homer, take this quarter, call your mother, and tell her you're never going to be a stripper.
Aren't you gonna chuckle?
There's nothing to chuckle about.
He then quite literally slips into a Successmanship 101 class, which is supposed to teach him how to succeed in the workplace. He's completely inspired and back at work. He goes around the plant finding problems and offers his solutions to Mr. Burns, hoping to get a promotion and a raise in return. But having worked at the plant for years, you'd think Homer could predict how his boss would react.
Stop wasting my time, you corn-fed man-cow. Would you mind?
Yes, sir. Oh, look at the little eels. Oh, electric eels.
The next day, Homer overhears Smithers worrying about the nuclear waste Mr. Burns dumped under Legoland, which has been causing the attractions to come alive and impale tourists. Another sentence I never thought I'd say in my life. Burns assures Smithers that he can never go to jail as he is not the legal owner of the plant. He then goes to the curtain and unveils who would actually be held responsible.
Canary M. Burns. This entire plant is in his name. So when they come to put C.M. Burns in jail, it's the canary that does the time.
Does Mr. Burns trust an inanimate object over Homer? Honestly, probably same. Homer, with the help of Bart, sets the canary free so he can overthrow the old coat. Burns is shocked to find the bird gone, and he's even more shocked to find out that the inspectors from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission are here. To save his skin, Mr. Burns appoints Homer titular head of the power plant, and within seconds of getting the promotion, he fires his boss, reveals that there were never any inspectors after all, and does something he's probably always fantasized about.
Yeah. Eat crowd, old man. Hey, that looks like fun.
Homer has the time of his life playing with all the gadgets in his new office, but quickly becomes burned out once he's expected to do actual work. Mr. Burns later returns from the vacation he took after being forced into retirement, and Smithers, well, he's been sentenced to 80 years for an opium bust. Burns takes Homer to the graveyard and shows him the graves of people he never spent enough time with because he was always working. Homer bursts into tears thinking about the family he's been neglecting after taking over the plant. He tries to thank Mr. Burns for showing him the error of his ways, but the old man still hasn't forgiven him for taking over his company. Brother, you did that to yourself!
Thank you for...
Steal my plant, will you? By the time you wake up, you'll be walled inside my mausoleum forever.
With Homer knocked out, Mr. Burns gets to work burying him alive in his mausoleum. But without Smithers' help, he's pretty darn useless at carrying out his evil schemes.
Scream all you like. No one will hear you.
I don't know why you're trying to steal a plant back. I didn't even want it.
Don't keep begging. You're just wasting precious oxygen. Brick by brick, I seal his doom.
There you go.
Despite Burns literally just trying to bury him alive, Homer hands back the plant and celebrates life going back to normal with a barbecue. But had he run to the cops and reported an attempted murder like a normal person, Mr. Burns would have been jailed easily for 20 years. Add another 20 years for torturing Homer with those eels, and 20 more years for causing the death of that tourist at Legoland, and money's looking at 60 total years for this. So guys, we're halfway through the video now, and Mr. Burns is already serving more than 100 years in jail. That's almost as old as he is. And I've only been scrapping the surface. Scrapping? I've been scrapping the surface of his misdeeds. These next crimes are insane, and that means old Burnsy is getting way more jail time. Let's see how much though. With his army of top-notch lawyers, it seems like Mr. Burns is untouchable to the law. But there was one episode of The Simpsons where he finally got his long-awaited comeuppance. Mr. Burns is celebrating the 4th of July with a picnic. Unfortunately, Lenny, Carl, and Homer can't enjoy the holiday as they are Mr. Burns' slaves for the day.
So your spare ribs cooked just the way you like them.
Spare ribs, eh?
Carl's lungs must be as strong as that rock Homer's carrying on his back. Jeez Louise! After Burns sarcastically claps at the spectacular show they put on, the guys get revenge by drinking their boss's wine and destroying his study. Monty calls the police, but they find a stolen painting and end up arresting him instead. The town is over the moon at this news, and everyone shows up to pelt the nasty old man with tomatoes on his way to the big house. At the police department, Mr. Burns immediately tries and fails to buy his way out.
Envelope marked bribe. Empty.
While Burns is being used as a tough guy's scarf in jail, Smithers takes over the plant and becomes an even worse boss than his predecessor. How do you manage that?
Instead of releasing hounds, he releases wolverines.
Fed up with Smithers' tyranny, Homer, Lenny, and Carl disguise themselves as prison wardens and break Mr. Burns out of jail. He practically got a get-out-of-jail-free card, but if he was caught, he'd be facing even more jail time. Mr. Burns was originally in the slammer for art theft, and knowing he wouldn't bother stealing something that wasn't super expensive, I'll put his sentence at 30 years for grand theft. Another 5 years would be added to that for escaping prison, plus an additional 15 years for bribing a police officer, and 20 for forced labor of his employees. Seriously, Homer should have just left this jackass to rot in jail. Mr. Burns hitting that fat guy whose name he can never seem to remember is one thing, but going after his 8-year-old daughter is seriously crossing the line. Springfield is holding a ceremony to dedicate their national park, Geezer Rock. Lisa's about to read a poem, but her moment gets ruined by Homer's stupidity.
Gotta go, sweetie.
I didn't read my poem.
Here's a poem. Run fast or lose your ad.
Mr. Burns is presumed dead, being buried by the landslide, and Smithers is beside himself knowing his beloved boss will never get to see the tattoo he got of him. Or won't he?
I'm alive! Oops, that stays in.
Yep, turns out Burns survived the disaster by drinking the milk of a mother mole and then slithering out of the rubble like the snake he's always been. He turns on the news to watch how the peasants of Springfield are reacting to the death of their fallen god.
We'll miss you, Geezer Rock.
Quickly, Smithers, rehydrate me.
But one old man we certainly don't miss is the late C. Montgomery Burns. As owner of the Springfield nuclear power plant, he generated both electricity and contempt. Thank you, Geezer Rock, for doing what none of us had the courage to do. Smush, Mr. Burns.
Wow, imagine being such a jerk in life that people mourn a rock over you. Sad that the town hates him, Mr. Burns decides to improve his public image by buying every media outlet in town. And pretty soon, even the Itchy and Scratchy show is telling everyone how great Montgomery Burns is. Shocked by Burns' total control of the media, Lisa calls him a stinky butt in her newspaper, the Red Dress Press, the only paper not controlled by the Burns media empire. Afraid of the little girl tarnishing his reputation, Monty tries to bribe Burn to giving up the paper with 3 adorable ponies, but fails miserably. The next day, Lisa and the rest of the Red Dress Press are out delivering papers, which basically tells Burns to drop dead. However, he isn't the one at risk of dropping dead anytime soon.
Stupid women drivers! Stupid women helicopter pilots! Everyone okay?
Nelson, Milhouse, and Martin call it quits, leaving Lisa and Bart to run the paper alone. Poor Lisa slaves away for hours typing up the next issue, but Mr. Burns ruins all her hard work by cutting the family's power. Thankfully, Principal Skinner lends her a hand-operated printer, and she's able to continue the fight against Burns. Refusing to lose a media war against a second grader, Mr. Burns brings out his most powerful weapon yet, the League of Evil.
My beautiful league! All dead.
Even monsters need air, sir.
Blessed. Well, gather their watches.
Robbing the dead! Burns has really done it all, hasn't he? As the skeletons behind his bookcase are of no use, Mr. Burns tries to crush Lisa another way. He calls Homer to his office and drugs him to gather insider knowledge about his daughter, and later proceeds to rip the little girl apart in the Springfield newspaper. Being humiliated in the town that she lives in is bad enough, but Burns' slander of Lisa literally extends to out of this world.
Go, Moon Millhouse.
Hey, the guy's creative, I'll give him that. Totally broken, Lisa prints the goodbye edition of her paper and cries. Feeling terrible for his daughter, Homer stays up all night eating burgers and writing his own paper in honor of her.
All my daughter ever did was tell people to think for themselves. I may be her father, but when I grow up, I want to be just like her. Except still a dude.
Oh, Dad.
While Lisa's flattered, she still believes her paper made no difference in the world. However, she actually inspired the whole town to stand against controlled media by printing their own papers. Mr. Burns accepts defeat and goes on a shopping spree to cope with losing to someone who still believes in Santa Claus. But I'm not sure shopping is going to make him feel better about all the crimes he's getting charged for. There is a lot, so I'll try to go over them without losing my fracking breath. First, Mr. Burns can be charged for the lies he's published about Lisa to Springfield and the rest of the galaxy for that matter. That'll earn him 6 months for slander. Next, we have 6 counts of attempted murder for trying to kill the Red Dress Press and Homer. 20 years is the minimum, so that's 120 years in jail plus another 5 for damaging the car. Lastly, Burns is getting 10 years for drugging Homer and 100 years for accidentally killing all 6 members of the League of Evil. I wonder what he was going to use them for anyway. Now, Mr. Burns might be a cold-hearted fiend, but that doesn't mean he's completely incapable of love. I'm not even talking about when it comes to Marge Simpson. Believe it or not, he's actually quite the sucker for stuffed animals, and there's a backstory to his childhood Stuffy that's more tragic than anything you saw in Toy Story. It's Mr. Burns' birthday, and his day begins with a horrible nightmare about his long-lost teddy bear, Bobo.
I'm the happiest boy there is, aren't I, Bobo?
Happy! Come here, Happy!
Yes, Mumsy?
Happy? Would you like to continue living with us, your loving natural parents? Or would you rather live with this twisted, loveless billionaire?
Let's roll!
A huge party is thrown to celebrate the birthday boy, and the town is invited provided they spend their hard-earned money on a gift for the richest guy in Springfield. Greedy Mr. Burns is gifted a ton of stuff he doesn't need, like hundreds of ties, more money, and gold. A frackin' unicorn? After turning his nose up at all his wonderful presents, it's time for the entertainment. And Smithers has arranged for the Ramones to sing a very special rendition of Happy Birthday.
Happy birthday to you!
Go to hell, you old bastard.
Hey, I think they liked us.
And judging by what Burns says next, it's safe to say he's no longer a fan of the band.
Have the Rolling Stones killed.
Oh, sir, those aren't...
Do as I say!
If he hated the music, he's definitely gonna hate this next part of the show. Stand Up by Homer. He's been preparing for this all day and is so ready to give his boss the roasting of a lifetime.
Cheeky. I'm Mr. Burns. Blah, blah, blah. Do this, do that. Blah, blah, blah. I think I'm so big. Blah, blah, blah.
Destroy him.
Blah, blah, blah. Look at me. Boom!
I love how the rest of the Simpsons weren't even phased. Like, they're just used to Homer's crazy antics. And so are we. Totally humiliated, Burns cancels the party and his security beats up all the guests, just for fun. Later that night, Mr. Burns confesses to Smithers that he misses his childhood bear, Bobo, and would give anything to know what happened to him. Well, it turns out that bear traveled far and wide before being frozen in ice and ending up in the Quickie Mart's freezer. Small world. Bart takes the toy home and gives it to Maggie, who instantly falls in love with the shabby old bear. Meanwhile, at the Burns' residence, Smithers is trying to cheer his boss up over losing Bobo, and wow, his attempts to do that are something else.
Squeeze me, tug at my fur.
Enough. Stop this grotesque charade. Now find my teddy.
Can you imagine if someone walked in on that? They think Smithers must have a strange fetish or something. Waylon sets out to find the teddy by posting its face on milk cartons in place of an actual missing child, poor Milhouse. Homer realizes Maggie is the teddy in question and sees this as the perfect opportunity to get $1 million and 3 Hawaiian islands. Burns comes not going to meet his employees' demands, and what happens next proves Homer Simpson is the greatest cartoon dad ever.
Give me the bear.
The bear. The bear.
Here you go, Maggie. The deal's off, Mr. Burns. The bear stays here.
You've made a mistake, Simpson.
We all know Peter Griffin would have literally ripped Bobo off Stewie's skin for a couple of bucks. Homer went back on the deal, but that doesn't mean this is over. After all, Mr. Burns never became a successful businessman by giving up so easily. That night, he and Smithers dress up as ninjas to try and take Bobo by force. They go over their plan on Flanders' roof after knocking him out, and when it's finally time to execute the heist, it is an immediate epic fail.
More cocoa, Mr. Burns?
Yes.
That was the night of your life, wasn't it, Smithers? He attempts a second heist, this time actually getting inside the house. However, his plan is foiled once again when Homer decides to stay in the kitchen all night eating cheese. The next day at work, Mr. Burns takes his anger out on the cheese lover by subjecting him to medieval torture.
Ow! After lunch, can I whip you?
Nope.
Oh, no fair. Ow!
After work, he and Maggie are enjoying Barney, but the show gets hijacked by Mr. Burns demanding Bobo back. Homer screams and changes the channel, but Mr. Burns is on that one too, and that one, and that one.
For all 78 channels, and you won't see any of your favorite shows again until you give in. Whoa, that bite.
Holy.
And stealing TV isn't even the worst part of Monty's evil plan. He's also diverted every single beer truck away from Springfield. Yeah, everyone's gonna die. An inevitable angry mob soon arrives at 742 Evergreen Terrace, forces their way into the home, and snatches the bear right out of Maggie's hands. But they aren't total savages and hand the teddy bear back after seeing the baby's heartbroken little face. The next day, Burns arrives on Homer's doorstep and orders Smithers to beg on his knees for the bear. Homer tells him the toy belongs to Maggie, so the old man goes to the backyard and tries to negotiate with the baby.
Josh! Beaten by an infant.
Accepting he's been beaten by an actual infant, Burns walks away feeling sad and pathetic. But Maggie feels sorry for the grown-ass man and offers him his precious teddy back. With his Bobo back, Mr. Burns can finally sleep like a baby, right after Smithers tucks him in, of course. However, that's probably the last peaceful rest he's gonna get, as he's now facing 286 years and 6 months in jail for multiple abhorrent crimes. Let me give you a quick breakdown of them. Assaulting Flanders, 10 years. Assaulting Homer at the party, 10 years. Assaulting approximately 16 party guests, 160 years. Torturing Homer, 20 years. Hijacking broadcast signals, 2 years. Interfering with transportation, 1 year. Trespassing on the Simpsons property twice, 2 years. Trespassing on Flanders' property, 1 year. Constantly harassing Homer for the bear, 6 months. And soliciting murder of all 4 members of the Ramones, 80 years. See, I told you he was the final boss of felons. Not that you'd want to, but how exactly do you go about landing a job at the Springfield power plant? Most employees probably responded to an ad in the newspaper, but some have been quite literally flown in against their will. Homer, Lenny, Carl, and Charlie are goofing off at work, and another worker is the butt of their joke. Turns out that guy was trying to do something super important, and now a nuclear meltdown is underway. Thanks for that, Homer. Everybody rushes to get the hell out of there, but the emergency exit door is a freaking painting. The guys miraculously escape, and Charlie goes to Mr. Burns' office to politely ask for a real emergency exit. Perfectly reasonable request, right? Surely No, of course he's gonna refuse. He's not a reasonable person.
Smithers, where does that tube go?
I'm not sure, sir. It was here when we moved in.
After sending Charlie to somewhere far, far away, Mr. Burns has a money fight with Smithers, and the scene ironically cuts to him offering a penny's wage to a new worker. Agents from the Department of Labor suddenly bust in and confront Mr. Burns for employing an illegal immigrant, and that's not the only bone they gotta pick with the old dude.
We found a missing Brazilian soccer team working in your reactor core.
That plane crashed on my property.
Look, Mr. Burns, we want to see some changes.
Instead of arresting Monty for kidnapping an entire soccer team, the department gives him a chance to make a change. But if the old dude was brought to justice for what he did, he'd be charged with human trafficking. 22 people usually make up a team, so that means Burns would be serving 550 years in jail, approximately. That's 25 years per enslaved soccer player. Monty can also be charged with negligence for being too cheap to install a real emergency exit. That's a big one. Add an additional 60 days to his sentence. That should be more. Plus, he'll get another 6 months for employing an illegal immigrant. Also, another 6 months on top of that for his discriminatory hiring policies. Altogether, that's 551 years and 60 days and a nomination for World's Worst Boss. Excellent. Mr. Burns really doesn't give a damn about the planet. I mean, if you think with all that money he has, he'd dispose of his highly toxic nuclear waste properly. Hell no.
I think it's full, sir.
That's ridiculous. The last tree held 9 drums.
Karma does come for the sleazeball that time, and he's arrested by the EPA and fined $3 million. Finally! A town meeting is called to discuss how to use the money, and Mr. Snrub is quick to offer his genius idea.
I say we invest that money back in the nuclear plant.
I like the way Snrub thinks.
The The town glares at Mr. Burns and Smithers, and they escape the scene like the lamest secret agents ever. If this was real life, Burnsy wouldn't get off with just a hefty fine. Oh no! Illegally dumping toxic waste is a serious violation of environmental law, and the penalty can be as high as 15 years. Burns said he'd already dumped at least 9 barrels at the park, and we know the bastard had targeted a children's playground before. So, I estimate he's illegally dumped nuclear waste at least 50 times. Do the math, that's a staggering 750 years. Of all the selfish stuff Mr. Burns has done in the 36 seasons? Oh my. Of the show, stealing the literal sun really takes the cake, don't you think? After Mr. Burns robbed the elementary school of its oil, Springfield now relies on him entirely for their energy. Well, almost. There's just one thing he can't steal: the sun. Or can he?
Good God.
A town meeting is called, and the mayor reveals how he will stop Mr. Burns' devilish plan with a strongly worded letter. That'll show him. The man himself then crashes the meeting and tells everyone to take one last look at the sun. Walks home feeling very proud of himself, and if you've seen this iconic 2-part episode before, you'll know what happens next.
Hey man, are you okay?
Won't dignify that with response.
Mr. Burns has been shot.
Burns is rushed to the hospital and pronounced dead. He's then rushed to a better hospital and pronounced alive. While he recovers in said hospital, police try to find the person responsible for the attempted murder. Meanwhile, the citizens of Springfield get to work pulling Burns' sunblocker down.
What town did we just crush?
Shelbyville.
Yeah, let's celebrate the people dying simply because of the town they live in. Great job, fellas. The sun was blocked out for no more than a few days, but in the Simpsons universe, that's apparently enough to completely deprive you of vitamin D. For putting everybody's health at risk, Burns would be charged with endangerment of public health, which will add 10 years to his sentence. And let's not forget that Burns' sunblocker crushed the town of Shelbyville. While he didn't directly cause the accident, it was his blocker, and it absolutely should not have been there in the first place. The population of Shelbyville is in the millions, and the sunblocker wasn't big enough to have crushed everyone, so I estimate that at least 1,000 people were smushed to death. Accompany that with around 200 damaged buildings, and Burns is looking at around 20,000 years for manslaughter and property damage. Not to mention he'd also be fined $400 million. That'll piss him off for sure. Oh, and you're probably dying to know who shot Mr. Burns. Well, it was the person you'd least expect.
Drop it!
And don't come and be saying, oh, I knew it was Maggie from the start. No, you didn't. Before you watch the episode, no, you didn't. And there you have it. Mr. Burns is serving a super long 22,159 years in the Springfield jail. But there are plenty of villains who make me lose even more faith in humanity. Click the screen to find out who.